The city lights of Phnom Penh glittered faintly under the damp night air. Down a narrow alleyway, past old stone walls and the smell of fried street food, stood Angkor Night, a private underground gambling den known only to the wealthiest and most reckless players. Its owner, Soka, was a legend in Cambodia's gambling world. Tall, sharp-eyed, always dressed in tailored suits, he was both feared and respected. The rumors said that Angkor Night was built on land near an ancient temple ruin, a place once considered sacred. But Soka didn't believe in curses, only in profit. That night, the club was buzzing with energy. Baccarat tables gleamed under soft golden lights, the air heavy with cigar smoke and the clinking of glasses filled with expensive liquor. The scent of sweat, perfume, and adrenaline mixed into a single intoxicating cloud. Soka stood at the center, observing his empire like a general overseeing a battlefield. Everything seemed normal, until David arrived. David was a foreigner, an Australian businessman with a calm but confident demeanor. He walked in carrying a suitcase so heavy that even Soka's guards raised their eyebrows. "First time here?" Soka asked smoothly, greeting him with a slight bow of the head. David smirked. "First time in this city. But I played in Macau, Vegas, even Monaco. I heard this is where the real action happens." Soka laughed, but his eyes stayed sharp. "You've heard correctly. Angkor Night never disappoints." David opened his suitcase, revealing stacks of cash bundled neatly in plastic wrap. The sight drew subtle gasps from nearby players. "Tonight," David said, "I'm here to play big." Soka signaled to the dealers. The main baccarat table was cleared and reset, cards shuffled with precision. As David took his seat, Soka noticed a strange chill creeping through the room, something he couldn't quite place. The first round began. David played with skill and unshakable confidence, quickly gaining the upper hand. As the night progressed, his winnings grew at a startling pace. But with every hand David won, something odd happened. At first, it was subtle, a whisper barely audible beneath the hum of conversation and music. Soka assumed it was just drunken gamblers muttering among themselves. Then the whisper grew louder, sharper, like many voices speaking at once, just beyond the walls. It wasn't Khmer. It wasn't English. It was a language no one could recognize, a chilling susurrus that seemed to echo from the stone foundations beneath their feet. The dealers exchanged uneasy glances, but Soka gestured for them to keep going. He wouldn't let superstition interfere with profit. David, seemingly oblivious, continued to play, his pile of chips growing higher and higher. By 2 a.m., David decided to cash out. He gathered his winnings with a satisfied grin, nodded to Soka, and headed toward the exit. Soka followed him partway down the long, dimly lit corridor that led out to the street. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then, as David turned a corner, the lights flickered. A shadow appeared at the far end of the hallway. At first, Soka thought it was just a staff member. But the shadow didn't move like a person. It was too thin, too tall, its limbs unnaturally long, its head tilted at an impossible angle, and one arm stretched forward as if reaching for something, or someone. Soka blinked, and the shadow was gone. The hallway was empty once more. A cold sweat broke out across his back. He forced himself to laugh under his breath. Just a trick of the light. Just exhaustion. But as he turned to head back inside, he heard it again. That same whispering, louder now, rising from deep below the floorboards. Soka paused, his hand frozen on the door handle. For the first time in years, he felt fear inside his own domain. He didn't know it yet, but this was the first move in a game far bigger than any he had ever played. A game with stakes not in money, but in souls. 2 nights later, David returned to Angkor Night. This time, he wasn't alone. With him came Ling, a Chinese investor known for his aggressive business moves and unshakable confidence. Ling was interested in opening a legal casino in Cambodia, and Soka was his key connection to the underworld. They arrived in a sleek black SUV, bodyguards standing outside like silent statues while the two men stepped into the club. Inside, Soka greeted them warmly, his smile perfectly rehearsed. Gentlemen, he said, his voice smooth as silk. Welcome back to Angkor Night. Tonight, may luck favor you. Ling's sharp eyes swept across the room. I've been to casinos all over Asia, he said, but I must admit, this place feels different. Sokka gave a small, knowing smile. That's what makes it special. David chuckled, trying to ease the tension. He's just here to see if your tables are as lucky as they say. 2 nights later, David returned to Angkor Night. This time, he wasn't alone. With him came Ling, a Chinese investor known for his aggressive business moves and unshakable confidence. Ling was interested in opening a legal casino in Cambodia, and Sokka was his key connection to the underworld. They arrived in a sleek black SUV, bodyguards standing outside like silent statues while the 2 men stepped into the club. Inside, Sokka greeted them warmly, his smile perfectly rehearsed. Gentlemen, he said, his voice smooth as silk. Welcome back to Angkor Night. Tonight, may luck favor you. Ling's sharp eyes swept across the room. I've been to casinos all over Asia, he said, but I must admit, this place feels different. Sokka gave a small, knowing smile. That's what makes it special. David chuckled, trying to ease the tension. He's just here to see if your tables are as lucky as they say. As Ling prepared to place his next bet, he suddenly froze. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. His vision blurred. The crowded room seemed to stretch and twist, the walls bending at unnatural angles. From the corner of his eye, he saw a dark figure crouching in the far corner of the room, its limbs folded wrong, like a broken marionette. He blinked, and it was gone. Are you all right, Mr. Ling? David asked, noticing the change in his friend's expression. Ling nodded quickly, forcing a smile. Just a little dizzy. Too much wine, perhaps, but as the wheel spun, Ling's dizziness worsened. The traditional music playing softly in the background began to sound distorted, like it was being played backward. He rubbed his eyes, but the sound only grew louder. Then, in a flash of clarity, Ling saw faces in the polished surface of the roulette table. Hundreds of them, whispering silently, their mouths opening and closing in unison. The wheel stopped, Ling won again. The crowd erupted in awe, but Ling barely heard them. In his ears, a single whisper rose above the noise. It was cold, guttural, and unbearably close to his ear. Come back. Ling's breath caught. He jerked his head to the side, expecting to see someone standing beside him, but there was no one. The whisper came again, this time from behind him. Come back. Ling stumbled away from the table, clutching his chest. David jumped up to follow, calling his name. Ling. What's going on? But Ling didn't answer. He staggered toward the exit, the room around him spinning like a nightmare. For a split second, he saw the dark figure again, closer now, its head almost brushing the ceiling. 2 glowing red eyes stared back at him, unblinking. Ling gasped, reaching a trembling hand toward the apparition. The whisper turned into a chorus of voices, all speaking at once. Come back, come back, come back. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure vanished. Ling collapsed at the entrance of the club, his body convulsing. David knelt beside him, panicking. Ling. Stay with me. But Ling's lips moved on their own, forming words in a language David didn't understand. His voice was deeper, raspier, not his own. Sokka appeared moments later, breathless. What happened? David's voice cracked with desperation. He just started seeing something, hearing something. He's burning up. Sokka crouched down, pressing his hand to Ling's forehead. It was ice cold. David looked at him, wide-eyed. Tell me the truth, Sokka. What the hell is going on here? Sokka hesitated, his throat dry. For the first time, David saw real fear in the seasoned gambler's eyes. They carried Ling to a quiet back room. The walls here were different, older, rough stone beneath layers of modern paint. David noticed faded carvings along the baseboards, half buried beneath plaster. Sokka didn't meet his eyes as he spoke. This land, before Angkor Night was built, it was part of an ancient temple site. Officially, it was abandoned. Forgotten. The government didn't care. He paused, glancing nervously at the doorway. But some people, they say the temple wasn't empty. That the spirits of those who died here, priests, slaves, warriors, never left. David stared at him, shocked. Are you telling me this place is haunted? Sokka clenched his fists. I'm telling you something far worse. These spirits don't just haunt. They feed. And there's nothing hungrier than greed. Ling's body jerked violently on the bed. His eyes snapped open, glowing faintly red. And in a voice that wasn't his own, he whispered, "The game has only begun." They carried Ling to a quiet back room. The walls here were different, older, rough stone beneath layers of modern paint. David noticed faded carvings along the baseboards, half buried beneath plaster. Sokka didn't meet his eyes as he spoke. This land, before Angkor Night was built, it was part of an ancient temple site. Officially, it was abandoned. Forgotten. The government didn't care. He paused, glancing nervously at the doorway. But some people, they say the temple wasn't empty. That the spirits of those who died here, priests, slaves, warriors, never left. David stared at him, shocked. Are you telling me this place is haunted? Sokka clenched his fists. I'm telling you something far worse. These spirits don't just haunt. They feed. And there's nothing hungrier than greed. Ling's body jerked violently on the bed. His eyes snapped open, glowing faintly red. And in a voice that wasn't his own, he whispered, "The game has only begun." The rain fell in relentless sheets over Phnom Penh, hammering rooftops and turning the narrow alleys into rivers of filth and mud. Inside a dimly lit monastery at the edge of the city, David paced restlessly while Ling lay unconscious on a straw mat, his skin pale and clammy. Beside him sat Biksu Samnang, a monk whose presence radiated calm but whose eyes were filled with grim knowledge. Sokka stood silently near the doorway, drenched from the storm. For once, the powerful gambling kingpin looked small, almost human, as he waited for the monk to speak. Samnang traced his fingers along an ancient manuscript spread before him. The symbols were strange, drawn in red and black ink. Finally, he looked up, his expression grave. "What you have brought upon yourselves," Samnang began, his voice low and heavy, "is not merely misfortune, it is an old debt, long unpaid." David frowned. Debt? What kind of debt? Samnang gestured toward the manuscript. Centuries ago, before Phnom Penh rose to power, this land belonged to a temple dedicated to the spirits of war and desire. It was said that the priests performed rituals to bind greed itself into physical form, a spirit that could be controlled, fed, and used to ensure victory in battle. Sokka's throat tightened. Fed? Fed with what? The monk's gaze darkened, with offerings of human desire, lust, anger, jealousy, and above all, greed. The more people gathered to compete, to crave, to take from one another, the stronger the spirit became. David's stomach dropped as realization struck. Gambling. Samnang nodded. Yes. Gambling is the perfect feast. Sokka took a deep breath, confessing what he had hidden for years. When I built Angkor Night, I knew the land was cheap because no one wanted it. There were whispers of curses, but I didn't care. I just saw an opportunity. He rubbed his temples, voice cracking. From the very first night, the winnings were unnatural. The stakes were high, the tension intoxicating. But I told myself it was just luck. I didn't want to believe something darker was beneath it all. Samnang slammed his hand on the manuscript, startling everyone. You fool! By building that den and filling it with greed and desperation, you have fed the spirit until it awoke completely. The monk's voice dropped to a trembling whisper. And now, it hungers beyond control. Ling suddenly convulsed on the mat. David rushed to his side, holding him down. Ling! Stay with me. Ling's eyes snapped open, bright red, glowing like embers in the dark. A guttural laugh erupted from his throat, nothing like his usual voice. Everyone froze as he slowly sat up, his limbs jerky and unnatural, like a marionette controlled by invisible strings. Through Ling's mouth, a voice spoke, a deep, echoing tone that chilled the room. "I smell the feast. The tables are ready. The game begins again." David's grip faltered. "My God." Ling's body twisted, veins bulging beneath his skin. His mouth stretched wider than humanly possible, and the voice roared, "Return to me." Then, just as suddenly, Ling went limp, collapsing back onto the mat. Samnang pressed a sacred amulet to Ling's chest, chanting rapidly. His face was slick with sweat. "He is not fully possessed," the monk said breathlessly. "But the spirit has marked him. It will use him as a vessel, unless we stop it." David's hands trembled. "How do we stop something like that?" Samnang looked at Sokka, his expression grim. "The spirit was bound through ritual gambling. It can only be sealed again through the same method, a final game." Sokka's eyes widened. "You mean, play against it?" "Yes," Samnang said. "But the stakes must be higher than anything before. You must offer it everything, your wealth, your body, even your soul. If you win, the spirit will be trapped once more." "And if I lose?" Sokka asked quietly. Samnang's silence was answer enough. Rain poured harder as they left the monastery, carrying Ling's unconscious body between them. The SUV sped through the flooded streets, tires slicing through black water. Inside, tension hung thick in the air. David stared at Sokka, his voice shaking with anger. "This is insane. You're telling me the only way out is to gamble with a demon?" Sokka didn't look at him. "No. I'm telling you that gambling is the only language it understands." David clenched his fists. "And you're willing to risk all our lives for this?" Sokka finally turned, his expression like stone. "If I don't, everyone who has ever stepped foot in Angkor Night will die. And their souls will be trapped there forever." David had no response. He glanced at Ling's pale face and swallowed hard. The man looked almost dead already. As the SUV turned the final corner, the glow of Angkor Night appeared through the curtain of rain. But the building looked different now. Cracks zigzagged across its stone walls like open wounds. The neon sign flickered violently, casting red shadows that moved too slowly, as if alive. The once bustling street outside was eerily silent. Even from a distance, they could hear the faint sound of dice rolling, cards shuffling, and laughter, but no one was inside yet. David felt his stomach twist. "Tell me you hear that too." Sokka nodded grimly. "It's already begun." Before they stepped out of the car, Samnang turned to Sokka. "You must understand, once you sit at that table, there is no stopping until the final hand is dealt. No matter what you see, no matter who screams, you must keep playing." Sokka swallowed hard, his hands shaking. "And if I fail?" The monk's eyes glimmered with something like sorrow. "Then Angkor Night will no longer be a building, it will become a mouth." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the haunted casino for a heartbeat before plunging it back into darkness. Sokka stepped forward, determination etched on his face. Behind him, David carried Ling, while Samnang clutched his bundle of sacred charms. As they approached the cursed doors, the laughter inside grew louder, almost welcoming them. And somewhere, deep beneath the stone foundations, something ancient stirred, waiting for its final game. The moment Sokka pushed open the heavy doors of Angkor Night, the world seemed to tilt. The air was thick with the stench of smoke, sweat, and old blood. Red and gold lanterns swayed overhead, though there was no breeze. But what made David's stomach churn wasn't the smell or the lights. It was the crowd. The casino was packed, just like before, except every gambler's face was wrong. Their eyes were hollow black pits, mouths stretched into grotesque grins. They sat frozen at their tables, moving only when the dice were rolled or cards were dealt, as if obeying invisible strings. "Dear God," David whispered, clutching Ling's limp body tighter. "Are they dead?" Sokka's voice trembled. "No. Worse. They're playing forever." At the very center of the casino stood a single massive table carved from black stone. Symbols glowed faintly across its surface, pulsing like veins beneath the skin. Behind it sat a figure draped in shadow, its outline shifting with every flicker of light. As they approached, a voice like 1,000 whispers filled the air. "Welcome back, gambler." Sokka froze, his hands slick with sweat. "You know me?" The shadow laughed, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Of course. You built this house upon my grave. You fed me with your games, your greed, your despair, and now, you will pay the final price." The figure leaned forward, revealing a face that was not a face at all, just a swirling mass of coins, dice, and gnashing teeth. David staggered backward. "God." The spirit gestured to the table. "Sit. The game begins now." Sokka lowered himself into the chair, his entire body trembling. Samnang stood behind him, chanting softly, clutching his protective charms. The cards appeared out of thin air, materializing in a burst of ash and smoke. They smelled of sweat and grave dirt. The game was some twisted mix of poker and a local game Sokka had played as a boy. The rules weren't clear, but somehow Sokka understood them. The spirit didn't need to explain. Every time Sokka lost a hand, something in the room changed. A gambler in the crowd would vanish, their chair collapsing into dust. The sound of their laughter lingered, echoing through the room like a scream. David's knuckles were white as he gripped Ling. "This is insane. We can't win this." Samnang snapped at him, his voice sharp. "Stay silent. Sokka must not lose focus." Suddenly, Ling jerked upright in David's arms. His eyes were glowing brighter than ever, veins standing out against his pale skin. "Ling!" David shouted, but his friend's mouth opened wide, and the other voice poured out. "You think you can escape?" The spirit roared through Ling's body. "You think you can cheat me?" The walls of the casino shuddered violently. Slot machines erupted in showers of coins and sparks. Roulette wheels spun so fast their numbers blurred into a single, searing line of red. The gamblers with hollow eyes began laughing in unison, a horrible, rhythmic chant that grew louder and louder. Samnang's chanting faltered. "The spirit is splitting itself, this is bad. If Ling becomes its vessel completely, there will be no stopping it." The spirit leaned forward, its voice now a guttural growl. "Last hand. Win, and you may leave. Lose, and you are mine." Sokka's hand shook violently as he lifted his final cards. Sweat dripped into his eyes, blurring his vision. Across from him, the spirit revealed its cards, a perfect hand. Sokka's heart stopped. It was unbeatable. David screamed, "It's over. We're dead." But Sokka closed his eyes, and smiled bitterly. "No. The house may always win, but only if I play by its rules." With trembling hands, Sokka slammed his entire deck face down, scattering cards across the glowing table. He stood and shouted, "I bet everything, my fortune, my name, my soul, and this house." The room went silent. Then the spirit laughed, a deep, rolling sound like an earthquake. "Interesting. So be it." The cards burst into flame. The black stone table split open, revealing a yawning chasm beneath. The floor crumbled as gamblers were sucked into the void, their laughter turning into screams. The walls of Angkor night collapsed, revealing not the streets of Phnom Penh, but an endless red desert stretching to the horizon. In the distance, shadowy figures marched in endless lines, dragging chains behind them. David clutched Ling and screamed over the chaos. "What is this place?" Samnang's face went pale. "The spirit's true domain. We've crossed into its world." The spirit rose to its full height, towering, monstrous, its body made of dice, coins, and writhing human arms. "The game is eternal," it bellowed. "There is no escape." Just as the spirit reached for them, Sokka grabbed a single coin from the crumbling table and threw it into the chasm. The ground shook violently. The spirit froze, its many heads turning in confusion. Sokka shouted over the roar, "You forgot one thing, monster. Even in gambling, the house can lose." For a moment, it looked like Sokka had outsmarted it. The spirit began to collapse inward, its form unraveling like smoke caught in a hurricane. But then Ling screamed, a horrible, guttural sound. His body arched unnaturally, and the spirit's voice returned through him. If I cannot have the house, I will have him. Ling's body exploded with black light, knocking everyone to the ground. When the light cleared, Ling was gone. In his place stood the spirit, now fully merged with flesh, wearing Ling's face like a mask. It smiled. The casino was gone. The desert was gone. David awoke on a rain-soaked street, Soka and Samnang lying unconscious beside him. Angkor Night stood in the distance, perfectly intact, as if nothing had happened. For a fleeting moment, David thought it had all been a nightmare. Then he saw the flickering sign above the entrance. It now read, "Welcome to Yo Ling's house." From inside, he heard Ling's voice, perfectly calm, perfectly human. "Place your bets, gentlemen. The game never ends." The doors swung open on their own, and a wave of laughter and dice rolling spilled into the night. David's scream was drowned out by the sound of the first roll. Blackout.